If the elements of art are the ingredients that you put into an artwork, then the principles of art is like the method. So it's how you manipulate the elements of art to create certain effects. So I'll go through some of the main principles of art. The first one I'll discuss is balance. So balance refers to how all of the elements of art are arranged within a composition, which is the whole work of art. So you can have symmetrical balance where there's an equal weight placed between all the elements of art. So colour might be balanced throughout. There might be an even colour scheme. So for example, in this image, the use of blue is used throughout the image, and it's punctuated evenly by the colour of the flamingos, the oranges and pinks in their feathers. So the colour scheme used is consistent. Also, the objects are visually weighted, so they're very evenly and symmetrically balanced. So you might not have an image that's as perfectly symmetrical as this one, but in terms of how the objects are arranged, there might be, a sense where nothing particularly stands out in terms of size. It's all quite even. Or you could have asymmetrical balance, which is where one object really jumps to your attention, or the visual weight is kind of lopsided. So in this composition here, the focus is on the big eye-like circle in the top right hand of the painting, and it's surrounded by negative space and some much smaller objects in comparison to this big eye-like circle form. So the balance is very heavily lopsided, and it's emphasized on this one particular area. So that's balance. Another principle is contrast. That's when there's clashes or differences between the elements used. So in this image, there's a contrast in the shape and the colour. So there are three grey birds sitting on a fence, and our eye is automatically drawn to the one that's a little bit different. So there is a contrast in the colour that's used. So the colour is white instead of the grey birds. And there is also a contrast in the shapes used, because it's a slightly different shape to the other birds, and it's facing a different direction. You could also have contrast in the scale of objects. So there might be one object that's really massive in comparison to some of the other objects, maybe there's a composition with lots of flowing lines, and your eye is instantly attracted to the very geometric lines that might feature in a small part of the artwork. So contrast is looking at the differences between elements. Movement is created usually through the use of line, but also could be created through the use of shapes or forms. In this woodblock image, line is used to create movement. So our eyes automatically follow the direction of a line, and our eyes here are drawn to the top of the wave because it's the biggest part of the image, and our eye follows the curving, diagonal, sweeping lines down the crest of the wave and into the rest of the ocean. So there's a real sense of movement created through our eye following the lines that make up the ocean, and it makes it look like it's a real moving body of water. Repetition is when elements are repeated. So it could be the repetition of a colour scheme throughout. It could be the repetition of lines or shapes to create patterns. You could have lots of little lines repeated to in a landscape painting, for instance, to indicate that there's a forest. In this painting, the cakes are repeated, and this creates this idea of almost like a production line, an excess of cake. It's like there's too much. It's supposed to be a comment on consumerism. So a lot of the time, the principles of art can be used to try and communicate a meaning to the audience. Focal point is the first thing that your eye is drawn to. So when you're finding the focal point of an artwork, start by closing your eyes and then open them and see what your eye is drawn to first. So when I close my eyes and open them and look at this artwork, the first thing I see is the man's orange face. And the reason for this is because it's at the center of the composition. Also, the color palette is predominantly blue, and orange is a complementary color of blue. So your eye is immediately drawn to the object that contrasts. So it's a combination of the positioning of the object near the center or just slightly off center, and the use of the element color that creates this focal point.